Good evening. Thank you all for coming out. I'm Rick Tate, Chairman of Pickens County GOP, and I'd like to thank all the people that are watching online. Thank you for joining us. Start out the evening as like I say, as always, and this is getting to be a habit too, as always. Pastor Kelly will start us off with a prayer.
Let's pray. Father, we do thank you for this time we have tonight. Thank you for this opportunity that you've blessed us with to participate in our government and to have a vote and to let our opinions be expressed. Thank you for this opportunity to hear from this one tonight, this candidate, and I pray that you would help us to, that our speech would be pleasing to you, that our discussion would be pleasant, and we would agree to disagree, Lord, wherever we might find disagreement among us. May this be a profitable time, and may it be pleasing to you. In Christ's name, amen.
And as always, recognize our guest, candidate for our District 5 House, Alan Quinn. Also candidate for District 5 State House, David Cox. And Rex Rice asked me to pass along his apologies for not being here tonight. He had another meeting he needed to go to. If you would all join me and stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we've established a pretty good record of bringing in candidates and giving folks around here the opportunity to access people that are asking for their vote face to face. And I want to give a special thanks to Representative Atwater for driving all the way up here from Columbia to visit Pickens County. We appreciate you coming. It's our pleasure to have you. I think we've established a pretty good record. Yeah, we are the proud home of the finest football team, college football team in the country. We're a little bit prejudiced around here, but my blood runneth orange. Drew, I'm sorry about that. At any rate, I'm not going to stand up here and run my mouth. The people came to hear what you have to say, Representative, and the floor is yours, please. Welcome, Representative Atwater.
I do sincerely thank you so much for having me. And John, if I tend to drop my microphone, so
there is one other thing I was remiss in, and I know you want to join me in this.
Please.
Today is Vietnam Veterans Day, and as the son of a Vietnam veteran, I honor you guys. My dad died with my stepdad passed away from results of Agent Orange.
wow.
When he passed, he was 100% disabled. From his time in Vietnam, he did 3 tours of duty. So you guys certainly have my respect and admiration. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. And maybe just a moment of silence for those. You want to do that? A moment of silence for our veterans that have passed away. Amen. Thank you. Again, thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy. I was born in Greenville, so the upstate is home. Beth is from Simpsonville. I was very blessed 25 years ago, a little bit more, to marry my best friend. And I don't know why she stayed with me 25 years, but I'm, again, very blessed that she has. So I am Todd Atwater. I'm from Lexington. I represent House District 87. I've done that for 8 years. A year ago, my wife and I sat down and we began to pray over what we were doing. And we had always thought from the beginning we might serve for 8 to 10 years. We have then 2 very young children now, 19 and 17. One's at Furman, and the other is at the Governor's School in Hartsville for science and math. So we all of a sudden became empty nesters. This was not our hobby, but a year ago we started to think, what's our next move. And it was, we started a firm. Beth is a partner. I'm the president and founder of our firm. And we've been enjoying doing that. But then so much began to happen. And we started looking at the races coming up. The governor's race, the attorney general's race, all the constitutional officers, the House, and others. And what we started to see disturbed us. And we believe very much that the race for the attorney general's office is the most important race in 2018. That is not to take away from the governor's race. The governor has mighty responsibilities, and that is something that we very much need to hold dear. But with what's been going on in Columbia and the actions of our Attorney General, we felt after 26 years of practicing law that we couldn't stand by and let it continue. We truly believe that the corruption that's gripped Columbia is something that is not just a Columbia problem. Our Attorney General, on record, has said that he gave confidential information to people that he knew was under investigation. Those people now have been indicted. At the beginning of all of this, the Attorney General said, I have a conflict, and I'm going to appoint an independent solicitor. Good. If you have a conflict, it's good to remove yourself. The problem is we've had 6 more indictments since that one, and he's had to remove himself from every single one. He's yet to be in the courtroom for a single indictment. And what I would say is when you're giving confidential information to people that you know are under investigation, you are obstructing justice. Short and simple. 1 conflict is a conflict. 7 conflicts is a pattern. And we can't afford to do that. As Attorney General, I won't have conflicts. I will be in the courtroom. I will not serve the powerful. I will serve the people. That is my pledge. On day 1, I will form a public corruption unit with a seasoned investigator and a very aggressive prosecutor. Because public corruption starts to undermine everything we do in government. If we can't have faith in our government and we can't restore that faith, and that's where it starts, is with the Attorney General. It's uniquely qualified to go after public corruption, and we don't see it being pursued. It's, again, not just a Columbia problem. We've had a sheriff in Greenville. We've had people in Anderson. You know, these are people that are in the public trust. They're violating that public trust, and our Attorney General is sitting in Columbia, not able or not willing to do something about it. So, you know, again, I will be there. I won't have those conflicts. The other thing that's very important is public safety. We will have a public safety unit. How you doing? We have a gang problem here in South Carolina, and nobody wants to recognize that. I've talked to solicitors and sheriffs around the state, our chief of police. In Richland County alone, in Columbia, we have 58. Let me repeat that, 58 known gangs. These aren't just simply people on the street dealing drugs. These are people commercializing drugs. They're commercializing what we're calling human trafficking, but it's truly just human slavery. And it's on all ends of the spectrum, from the workforce to, sadly, the sex slave trade. In Myrtle Beach, about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, the FBI, the local solicitor, the local sheriff busted a human trafficking ring. Our Attorney General was not even mentioned in the entire investigation. What's so sad about that is not that he wasn't there, but there was a 6-year-old little girl who was being trafficked. This isn't somebody just simply being evil. We know there's evil in the world. This is gang-related activity, and we have to stop it. And we have to stop it at its core. The only way I know how to kill a snake is to cut off its head. And what we often see or hear is, I've got Johnny, the guy dealing drugs on the street. I'm going to keep him if he'll turn on somebody higher. And then keep him, turn on somebody higher. That works okay. But at some point, the people say, we need action. So Johnny on the street goes to jail. The middleman goes to jail, and believe me, the top guy is going to go to jail as well, and for a very, very long time. Again, drugs and gangs are out of control in South Carolina, no doubt. And that is more than simply a pass-through of the office. It is a pledge that the Attorney General should make and keep. That's what you elect them to do. It is not a simple job, but it's one that I'm especially well equipped for. Since I started 26 years ago, I worked for Senator Thurman. I was his chief counsel on the Labor, Education, and Health Committee. I've run businesses, I've started businesses, I've sold businesses. Complex antitrust, complex civil law, and I've had my share of assigned cases in parental rights, children's rights, and other things. So the Attorney General will say, my opponents aren't prosecutors. I didn't serve 2 years in the solicitor's office, check a box, and move into private practice. And then from private practice, get elected and make sure that my former partners got $1.2 million. Because the Attorney General can assign cases outward. And that's exactly what he's done. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. But I don't think that you should be doing it if you have a conflict in one area, your former partners are probably a conflict in another area. And I truly believe that. I have the experience, but I also will deliver. And that's the bottom line. You need somebody that will deliver. I took an insurance company that was $13 million to $41 million in a very short period of time. Took a statewide network and was able to sell it. It started out with $250,000, and just a few short years later, sold it for well over $1 million. We have an awful lot we have to tackle. The Attorney General's office is not simply public corruption. It's not simply crime. It's a $60 million agency most years. $20 million just in fines and fees and regulations in the banking industry. Civil litigation. 300 people in that office, and they need a leader. That's what they're looking for, and that's what I can bring. The line I like to use is one that Elvis, we all know about, and that's, we need a little less conversation, a little more action. That's what I promise you. I'm asking you to join me. I'm asking you to support me. At the very least, help me restore faith in our government. Thank you for allowing me a few moments of your time and for coming this evening. I know we have some questions. Rick, you've warned me of some of them. I'm not afraid of them. I'm happy to try to answer any of them. So thank you so much.
Oh, you want to turn me? Oh, okay, I am on. Thank you. Well, we'll start with House Bill 4418, the bill that would, it's partial voter registration. It's a voluntary, it would be a voluntary law that would simply add a box to the voter registration form that would allow you to declare which party you affiliate with. It's in the House now. It has 48 co-sponsors. Have any thoughts on that?
First,
as a matter of fact, I am on the committee appointed by the state chairman to try to help push this through and to try to convince you to support us in our efforts to get this law passed.
Well, Rick, I will say, you and I talked briefly about it just before we went on, and I appreciate that question because in gathering my thoughts, my initial reaction was I'm not sure that that's necessary. Why would we need that? But what I would say is a couple of things. Sadly, in a week's time, we will be at crossover. If we don't get it passed in the next week, then it's not gonna see the light of day. It might have 48 co-sponsors, and they might all be the right people. You showed me that list, and my seatmate, the people that I consider to be conservative in the House, and people that I join with on most matters are on that bill. So my pledge is I will look at the bill, and more than likely I'll be happy to sign on. But I don't want to pledge that to you that I will until I look and read the bill itself. It sits in the Judiciary Committee. It hasn't moved. It's been there since pre-filing in November. So I don't know why it hasn't moved with 48 co-sponsors. If it's simply saying that I affiliate with the party, I have no problem with that at all. I'll tell you right now, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, and that's what I am. I'm happy to put my name or initial or whatever. You called me representative at the beginning, I appreciate that. But that's not why I'm in this. I have 3 titles that I care about. One is husband, one is father, I have 2 children, and one is child of God, a follower of Jesus Christ. Those are the titles that matter. Nothing else in this world matters in the title business. So if we want to do it because we believe that will be a safer, cleaner voting, we have so much fraud in the voter area. That's another area the Attorney General needs to be tackling. If that helps clean it up, I'm happy to sign on.
I appreciate your answer.
Yeah.
A couple more and I'll let everybody else have their turn.
Please.
The word conservative, I consider myself a Ronald Reagan conservative. I have a very definite idea about what conservatism is and what my principles are. Would you be so kind as to tell us, to you, when you say I'm a conservative, what does that mean?
Well, I think what you're going to find in any Republican candidate that calls themselves a conservative, they're going to say they're pro-life. There are certain things. I believe life begins at conception. I believe we should have prayer in schools. I believe that we should have low taxes, less government intrusion, and I'll do everything I can to fight it. And I've shown it in my 8 years. If someone decides that they can call me anything but conservative, they're either a liar or they're ignorant because they have not looked at my record. 3 years ago, the House decided that it was going to do a spend-all bill, $500 million to throw around in all kinds of wonderful projects, what we call pork barrel projects. And I offered the amendment and stood in the well and said, I am against this, and my amendment was to strike and kill the entire bill. The Republican leadership came to me and said, we want you to take down your amendment because you're going to embarrass us. And I said, this isn't about embarrassing the Republican Party. This is about doing the right thing and saving the people of South Carolina from a pork barrel project that was $500 million. And fortunately, we won on that. But I could have easily stepped aside and been a little bit more popular with leadership, but I don't do that. It's not about popularity. This is not a popularity contest. I'm running for the Attorney General's office. I'm not running for anything else. AG means Attorney General, not aspiring governor. And I'm afraid that 8 years has been spent as an aspiring governor. And that's what I'm trying to stop.
I appreciate both. That is good answers.
No, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I don't give compliments unless I mean them.
Appreciate that.
A couple of just quick ones. This is an easy one. Again, trying to get a bearing on your politics.
Sure.
And we'll get to the Attorney General part of it in a second, but as far as your politics go, when we had, 17 presidential candidates
Yes,
running
sir.
last time, who did you support?
I supported Marco Rubio. We originally supported our wonderful governor from Texas, but he didn't make that final leap the second time. But we supported Marco Rubio because we believed in his Christian roots, his conservative values that he had brought to the Senate. But I'll tell you this, I was not an anti-Trumper. I believe that Donald Trump has done more for us, not the party, but for America. I believe in his Bring Back America plan. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud that we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm proud that we start with prayer. Every subcommittee that I start as a chairman, I start with a prayer at the State House. And I know I'm deviating somewhat, but I'll tell you, we had a conversation with a school board member last week, I believe it was last week, and they were concerned because they weren't allowed to pray. Oh, it was county council, I'm sorry. They weren't allowed to pray before their meetings. And I said, you're allowed to. This Attorney General will stand in front of whoever files a lawsuit and says, I will defend your right to pray. Simply because you are gathered as a county council or the General Assembly or in a small gathering of private people, you have that right And this Attorney General will fight anybody, the U.S. Supreme Court, the South Carolina Supreme Court, or anybody else for that right.
I support you in that. We also, before the meeting, we talked about the the controversy that's going on in Greenville County with the Greenville hospital system and the merging with Palmetto. If you, I know it's been discussed in the State House, and it gets into the,
Right.
what laws are being followed, and did they go from public to private legally? Any thoughts you share on that? It's a pretty hot topic in the upstate.
Sure.
And as Attorney General, or a legal opinion would be
Well,
in your wheelhouse.
again, let me have 3 bites at that apple if you don't mind. The first is I'll follow the law. I don't know the particulars of what the controversy is here. I know that the delegation is very upset because they have been cut out of the system. Greenville Hospital was founded as a county hospital. Therefore, it is a special purpose district of the state. Should Greenville Hospital make a lot of bad decisions and go bankrupt, who's on the hook? It's not the hospital. There are no investors except for every tax-paying citizen of South Carolina. So first of all, they're a part of our state government system. They've run it very well. It's a good business enterprise. They've been smart in a lot of what they've done. They've expanded their reach. They've expanded their services. And I have no problem with that. I do believe that the Attorney General, as well as the Federal Trade Commission, needs to be overseeing such large mergers. I don't see that happening. I think they're more worried that our dentists share information on pricing than they do an entire hospital system that's going to take 1 out of 3 patients in South Carolina and serve them. I'll tell you one problem I have with Palmetto Health. And again, I know a lot of the people that work there. I know a number of the executives. They're good people. But when I drive I-26 west towards Greenville, there's a sign. It's a billboard. It's something like cooling waters or soothing waters. And it's nothing more than a spa owned by Palmetto Health. Now, I'm all for physical therapy, but I'm not for the overreach of a non-tax-paying entity competing against our businesses. So the local person now has to start at a disadvantage and not get the same advantages. So I have some issues with it. The delegation has a right to stand up and have its voice be heard because that's the law. And that's what they should be doing. As for the merger itself, if it's the best thing for the state, that'll be great. But I think it ought to be adhered to by the law and reviewed as a competitive situation.
Anybody else have a question, please raise your hand. But I can go all day.
Hello.
It's on.
Okay, whenever the last AG candidate was here, I asked him about the gang activity bringing in meth up our interstates from Mexico. And whenever you started off tonight, you talked about gangs
Yes, sir.
operating here. Just how aggressive are you going to be after going after these people? Because in Pickens County, our jail stays full with a bunch of meth addicts who are recidiv. They keep coming back.
Sure.
And I'm sure that they have a problem in other counties, but here in the upstate we have a bad meth problem. And I really would like it if somebody, like an AG or somebody, could help our sheriff up here attack that problem so it cuts down on our law enforcement costs.
Well, I'm really glad you asked, because whenever you give a speech, you know that at the end of the speech, you've forgotten something. And I did. Well, I believe truly that the only way you kill a snake is to cut off its head. I will be forming an anti-gang unit within the Attorney General's office. And what I'll be doing that's going to be unique is I'm going to have the grand jury, the statewide grand jury, on the road. Right now, your sheriff, your solicitor, whoever is trying to get involved in this, they are somebody really wants some barbecue. They are, that wasn't very nice. Or they're cheering. Maybe they're cheering. They're having to come to Columbia and bring their witnesses. They're having to bring everyone to Columbia for the grand jury system. And I think you lose a lot. The grand jury will be on the road. It will be in Pickens County, where the sheriff and the solicitor and the witnesses and the people are. We have a drug crisis. It's nationwide. I've served on the opioid task force. I've heard the stories. We've all been touched. If we think we haven't looked at our own families and friends. It's out there. A lot of these people on meth and on other drugs, it is beyond simply saying, I'm going to stop today. We need a better mental health system. We need a better treatment system, but we also need to stop it at its core. And the only way I know to do that is to take the fight to their territory instead of trying to bring our sheriffs and our solicitors down to the ivory tower in Columbia and put the grand jury on the road and fight them where they are. I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah.
This is my pet peeve that I always come back to with just anybody, especially somebody that's in the House. Government reform. You talked earlier about changing regulations, sunset after 5 years on all regulations. That's like the tip of the iceberg. My pet peeve is the separation of powers that our founding fathers envisioned barely exists in Columbia.
Correct.
The state legislature holds all the power,
Yes,
pretty
it
much.
does.
And there are people that I have no opportunity to vote for or against that are running the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a representative government.
I agree.
So how do you envision, you're agreeing with me, so how do you envision reform and how to go about it? And as an AG, how could you help facilitate change? And have you, since you've been in the House and saw this up close, I mean, like the selection of judges it's ridiculous. And I mean, in my humble opinion, it needs to be, it's desperate need of reform. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on and on.
No, it's a much more complex answer than the question, and I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. The governor has very weak powers. This is a constitutional issue in South Carolina, not a U.S. Constitution, but the South Carolina Constitution. Because what we do as the State House is we hold on to all the power. A long time ago, we decided to write a constitution that basically spread the power as far and wide as we could because we didn't trust any one person or group to run the state. And I believe in 3 branches of government. I believe the governor should have more powers, and I've fought for 8 years for that. I replaced Nikki Haley. The seat that she held is the one I hold. Now, we might have different styles, but we agree on an awful lot. And I voted time and time again to make sure the governor, had more power. Let me repeat again, I'm not running for governor. As Attorney General, the Constitution allows the legislature too much freedom, in my opinion. So the people are going to have to rise up and say, we want less, we want it equal. Sadly, our judicial branch are so terrified that they won't get reelected, that their judicial decisions are either non-existent or they only support the legislature. And that's another problem in and of itself. You're right, it is a mess. I don't think the answer is a gubernatorial appointment because look at our federal system. What we have are judges, and we do, all trial lawyers judge shop. But in the federal system, we do it especially based on who appointed them. If I want one outcome, I'll find an Obama appointed judge. If I want a different one, I'll go for a Reagan appointed judge if there are any left. I mean, that's what we have. But our own Supreme Court seems to have an animus against our solicitors and against our police and against doing the right thing. I think the Attorney General is uniquely qualified to work with the judges that are doing it right and to criticize and call out the ones that aren't. As an executive branch member, I believe you don't wait to do these things, you do it. We have a situation going on, you're Duke Power generally. If you're co-op, you're going to be affected. But we have the SCANA issue going on. Our current Attorney General said after 8 years of office, this might be unconstitutional. Got my headline, now I'm being silent. I've accepted SCANA money. I've accepted Dominion money. I'm being quiet. That's not fair. 2 years ago, I stood up against the chairman of the committee I'm on. And we've been friends for a long time. But I told him beforehand, you haven't been running this committee right. I have 40,000 people I represent. That means I should be able to bring forward bills. I should have an opportunity to speak for them and not be shut down. So I voted against him as chairman. 2 years ago, I called for a hearing, and he granted it, on the SCANA issue. We had 6 and 7 increases in the same number of years. Something's broken. It shouldn't take that long for somebody to raise their hand, but I was the first one to do it. And for asking for the hearing and asking the question, is this related to the nuclear facilities, and being lied to by the government agency Overwatch, they said no. I was removed from the subcommittee and wasn't allowed to be on the study committee that has now found out all the fraud and all the other things that are going on. That's where the Attorney General should be, in the middle of this. He should be saying who did what when, and was it fraudulent? When they didn't report to their own boards, the very report that took them down, that hasn't even been mentioned by this office. I have a problem with that. But to your question, it's not equal. Watch any bill. Speaker gets 3 appointments. Speaker pro tem in the Senate gets 3 appointments. The governor might get 3 appointments. Well, that's a 2-to-1 ratio. Who's going to win that battle? I've been fighting that, our DOT should be a cabinet agency. I believe it.
You said that you wouldn't want to go to the same system they have at the federal level with advising consent by the Senate and appointed by the governor. What system would you think would be better? Direct election or?
No, I don't like. I think direct election is just a trial lawyer's dream. I do. I think ours is broken because it's the screening process. You're always going to have politics when there's money at stake and when there's a position at stake. I'm not saying ours is great, but as Republicans, we know that a republic has broken things with it as well, but it's the best one we've got. I believe this is actually a unique and a better system, because what I don't want somebody that influences the governor. If I've given money to the governor, to be able to say, I now want you to appoint certain judicial candidates. And we know where the power resides in the Senate. It's among a few, less than a handful, and those will control the same thing. I'd rather have 170 people at least have the opportunity. And I've seen it in the last 3 years, more than the previous, where people are standing up and saying, you may have screened this person out. There may not be another candidate, but I'm not voting for that person. So they're beginning to break that down. I think the screening process is the problem. Yeah.
Yes, sir. My name's William Rogers.
Nice to meet you, William.
Come up here to support Alan Gwynn.
Yeah.
I'm a long-life resident here in Pickens County. It's nice to hear your views on everything. One thing in particular that struck me that just earned you a vote would be about the judges.
Yes, sir.
We got too many bad judges and not enough good ones. Now, the gentleman's question earlier is the crowding of the detention centers.
Yes, sir.
All over the state.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he is right. And I have been up there. I lost a daughter in 2012, a beautiful 23-year-old daughter, through this opioid.
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's a drug problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
It is.
I give the sheriff, I give everybody their names, they didn't move. I moved, And it's still out there. But to his question, this guy in particular that I think overdosed my daughter has
Right.
been up there, locked up 4 times for crystal meth.
Yes, sir.
Now, the judges keep letting him go. Now, that's where we need somebody.
Yes, sir.
And that's got to be on the priorities.
Yeah.
Because most of our problems are starting here in the community. That's why I'm going to support this man. And we need to get communities built, and we need to start spreading. The problem is the judges. That's my opinion. I've lost a daughter. I don't think we're doing enough on the local level. Now, I think you're smart enough to take care of the Columbia stuff
Right.
and the federal stuff. I'm a Trump man from all the way, so I kind of got you beat on Greenville there.
And that's,
But
yes, sir.
you've got my vote, and the one
Well, thank
thing
you.
I would like to do is that if you get elected, attack the judges that ain't doing their job.
William,
Thank you very much.
well, thank you. First, I'm sorry for your loss. I have a beautiful 19-year-old, and I can't imagine. I have a very close friend who lost a son, and his response is, there's nothing in this world now that has a hold on me. I can't imagine. So, however, there is a bill that has gone through the House that I support, and it says that a drug dealer, the distributor that distributes drugs and there's a death as a result, that is a capital offense. I believe it's the same thing as pulling a trigger. I believe it's the same thing as running somebody down. You know it's not just a possibility, it's a probability. And you should have that. And you should have that fear. Let me temper it. We have a lot of people in our jails. I believe in mercy because I pray for it every day because I know I need it. And I think a lot of our first-time drug users need to be diverted. But that's about it. Multiple, you're on your way. I still think you have to have mercy, but you have to have a program, and we don't have that in place. We are not putting our resources where they need to be. We're spending it on everything else, but the right things. And if we don't get a hold of this drug crisis, and again, that's why I go back to the gangs, the Attorney General is uniquely qualified. He's the only one that is, by statute, appointed to go after gangs. That's why you don't hear the solicitor going after a gang. They're going after the dealer or what. My job has always been, and my management style has always been, I support those that get the job done. And I don't think our sheriffs or our solicitors have been supported through the Attorney General's office. And when they say my jails are overcrowded, I think we ought to say, where's the problem? Help these people if they can be helped. Otherwise, stack bricks on bricks, make more prisons. That's where we should be.
One more comment.
Please.
But, okay, just concerning my daughter's death, that is the problem, and it is like pulling the trigger. I give them names. I know who done it.
Yes, sir.
But yet they don't want to go because she's partly responsible for being sucked into this.
Sure.
But as far as you mentioning on frontline gangs, I'm gonna tell you, anybody that's lost a daughter, I'm a CI in this county. And I'm still going to be a CI till I get my answers on my daughter's
Yes, sir.
death with the opioid crisis going
sir.
on. I'm not going to harm anybody. I just want the answers. There's drug dealers out there, and I want them off the street, and the judges are putting them back on.
I agree. No, I agree. And that's part of the judicial screening committee is to try to make sure they're doing their job. Unfortunately, it's gotten wayward, and now they're so afraid to rule or afraid the trial lawyer is going to anonymously complain against them, they won't even make it through screening. And that's what's happened. I've spoken to one of the Supreme Court justices, somebody I very much respect from Greenville, and he sees that problem, and we're trying to work on that answer. I told her I'd continue to work on it if I left the House, if I didn't get elected. I think it's that important. So, no, thank you. No. William, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I guess it's sort of two questions, and I may ramble a little bit myself. First of all, thank you for being here. I
It's a
apologize
pleasure.
for getting here late.
Not at all. You got some good barbecue.
It's been a long day, and I missed lunch, so I ate like a hungry wolf. And if I get any of these dates wrong, I apologize. I'm going to do my best to be truthful.
Yes, sir.
In and about 2000, I heard, I think then AG Charlie Condon at a Rotary Club talk about drugs
Right.
and gangs. And it just so happened I had a friend at the time who was a prosecutor in Greenville County, and we were in a restaurant, and this was about 2000. He said, just look around. He said, half the people in this restaurant are on some sort of drugs.
Sure.
I mean, this was 17 years ago, right? And then, I guess for the better part of 2002 to 2010, I heard on multiple occasions our now Governor Henry McMaster, who was the Attorney General,
Right.
talk about gangs and drugs.
Sure.
In fact, he used to say, y'all, it's raining drugs from the sky. Oh, Lord, and perverts everywhere. We got to get them off our streets. I mean, it was like a stick, I guess you could say. And I'm a fan, by the way.
Sure.
I probably didn't do him justice. So
I think you got it. You got the imitation down pretty well.
Oh, yeah. I do. Anyway, I got a Southern comedian thing I do. So, anyway, what's missing? I mean, like, I like you. You seem smart.
Sure.
I've always supported Alan Wilson. I don't really know him.
Sure.
I mean, I've met him a couple times. He came to a tailgate of mine at the Clemson football game one
Right.
time. We're going on 2 decades, and you could say it's worse. I don't know. If a prosecutor in 2000 said half the restaurant was on drugs, I don't know how much worse it could get.
Right.
I mean,
Well, yeah. No.
I mean, what is missing? Money?
Unfortunately, we try to solve everything with money. I don't believe that that's. I think there's a role for money. I think part of that is in rehabilitation more than it is in other areas. We need to be hard on the drug dealer, and we need to make sure that those that are using and are dependent have a way out of that. And that's why so much of the resource, I believe, has to go into rehab. That is probably not overly popular because I am a law and order kind of guy. You chose that. You have made that choice. And yet drugs simply are not that kind of a thing. If I speed down the interstate, I've made a choice. I can stop that. Once you become dependent on drugs, it's a totally different thing, and you need help. You need the mercy. I'm not saying we forgive. They still owe a debt to society because it's destroying our society. It truly is. To answer your question, what's the difference? I don't know. Sometimes you just say, gosh, other people have ruined it for the rest of us. I can just tell you that that is a focus of mine. A gang unit, I think, will go a very long way. We don't have one. And people that are tasked, of the 300 people in the Attorney General's office, we need to task them with that. And then we need to work solidly with the sheriffs and the solicitors and say, what do you need? What can I do to support you? I'm uniquely qualified to go back to the General Assembly and say to them, you don't want to fund this? I'll be right back. And I'll be standing in front of a podium like this, telling everybody in South Carolina that the General Assembly just wasted millions of dollars on pet projects, but couldn't see forth to stop our drugs, stop our gangs, and the children that will be affected. I always turn to my wife because we know. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I knew I didn't recognize.
We know she's new to Pickens. We know that the gangs at our local middle school are recruiting 4th graders. It is that pervasive. We have to stop it. It's not just using it. It is the distribution, and that's where you stop it.
We can all preach it. Yeah, I have a 5th grader and a 9th grader.
Yes, sir.
And my 9th grader says there's a bathroom at Easley High School that the teachers don't go in.
Sure. And why isn't somebody doing something about it? I can't answer the question. I honestly can't. I wish I could. Yes.
Let me address what Mr. Willis just said pertaining to Pickens County.
Yes, sir.
Pickens County probably got the worst drug problem of any county. Mm-hmm. We're number 1 in deaths related to drug overdoses. We're number 1 in the state for suicides. We are the lowest in the state on per capita income, We're 46 out of 46 counties in economic development. I think that one of the reasons, now Pickens County is like this all over the state, the reason it's worse in Pickens County is because we have no opportunity. If these kids don't have an opportunity and a dream to be able to go out and do something and work towards, they're going to get on drugs.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to follow up, and I know it's a statewide problem, but we really got it bad here.
Sure. And there's a direct correlation, I mean, by statistic and meaningful statistics, between unemployment and drug use, no doubt. But it's getting younger and younger and younger. So it's not just that, but you mentioned it, it's the opportunity. When I'm a young person and all I see around me is negative, and I'm 49th in the United States in education. I mean, this is not one simple problem. Moms and dads aren't there. This afternoon we were with somebody and they said it's a simple problem, bring the prayer back to school. I believe in prayer, bringing that back in school, and let's start there. It's not a simple problem. But if we don't have an undergirding and a base, what our country was founded on, and our faith in family and in God, we're going to have this just continue and perpetuate and get worse and worse. Yes, sir.
Two quick questions.
Yes, Elliot.
It's the same question, just different time frame. Are you currently using a consultant for your AG race? If so, who? And during your time in the House, did you use a consultant? If so, who?
The answer to both is Starboard Communications. Okay. I did, I am, but I will tell you, it's my consultant is my political consultant during an election. They are not my political consultant in office. The Attorney General is in a unique position with its opinions because they take on legal significance. It's not for sale. My consultant doesn't take on clients. It doesn't lobby the State House. It will not approach me to do that. If they do, I will call them down or I will put them away. As I said, just because I have a friend, I may have a conflict. But my friends know that my conflicts result in bad things when you do bad things. My wife and I knocked on over 3,000 doors, all shoe leather. We earned that right to be on the ballot, and we won. But our consultant stopped the day of the election. Good friend. I've known him for a very long time. Very smart. But he's never approached me about a legislative issue, and he never will. Yes, sir.
There was a amendment to the budget that would have moved money from supporting tourism in South Carolina to putting resource officers in schools.
Yes.
Do you remember how you voted on that amendment, and do you have any comments on that?
I don't. We literally vote hundreds of times. I will tell you, most likely I voted against the bill because there was a series of amendments offered on local government funding, which I'm supportive of. But tourism is a reflection of South Carolina. When people from out of state think of South Carolina, they think of Myrtle Beach and they think of Charleston. They think of Clemson, thanks to football. They think of it thanks to basketball this year. They think of Carolina and women's sports, thanks to that. But at the end of the day, simply shifting from one of your biggest revenue producers for resource officers that are $60 million in need, you're playing games with the budget. And that's what was going on. 3 years ago, I offered a series of amendments for the local government fund. We have violated our commitment to local government every year I've been in the House. 5% of the previous year's budget is supposed to go to the local government fund. Now, we provide actually more funding than that to the local governments, but not by the formula that's set in statute. So I offered an amendment. At the time, you could offer an amendment under $5 million and not have to point out where you got it from. They would just balance it later. So I offered a 4.5, a 4, a 3.5, a 3, 2.5, all the way down to $500,000. On the first amendment, I won overwhelmingly, like 90-something to 12. The budget chairman did his job. We moved on, worked the room, somebody recommitted the vote, and I lost the next time. And the member who stood up and said, I voted with you because I believe in your cause, but I think we've had enough. And I moved to recommit, which is a way to kill the amendment, and he reversed it all. And I didn't win past that. Unfortunately, we had a couple of guys that decided that amendment is one that sounds the best. They took $40 million from a children's fund to put it into the local government's fund. They took $10 million from DSS, other DEODIS, drug and abuse and alcohol and abuse services, and others. They were trying to make a point. And their point was, what I supported, the local government fund, we need to adhere to our promises. It's just like our retirement system. If we have a teacher who's retired, we made a promise. And that we need to live up to it. If I voted against it, it was because I wasn't going to support taking money away from one to make a point on the other. The local government fund is a priority, and we haven't done that. It's in statute.
You would, if I understood you correctly, you would support the idea of each school having a resource officer, but the way they were going about playing with the money to get
That's right.
to
Exactly
get the
right.
funds was
Yes, sir.
the wrong way to go about
Yep.
it.
And let me address our school safety has to be a priority. And I've said this for a long time. We had Columbine, and we paid attention. We had Sandy Hook, and we paid attention. We had Florida, and everybody woke up and said, today's the day we have to do something about it. We should have, in our law enforcement and our Attorney General and others, been working on this problem. Here's what I would have done as a sitting AG. No press. Get the solicitors, the sheriffs, chiefs of police, come to Columbia within 48 hours. Let us provide as many solutions as we can and offer that to the local school boards. Because your Pickens school board is going to know better how to protect that school than my Lexington would for Pickens. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And then we go back to the state. I thought guns for teachers was a really bad idea for two reasons. One, they're not going to be trained well enough and sufficiently enough. Instead, we need more training, active shooter training. We have one active shooting trainer. So my chief of police in Lexington said, when I get someone out of the academy, I have to retrain them all over again. They haven't had enough. But you put the gun in the hand of a teacher, you're putting a burden. They're already protective. We've seen the teachers. Our teachers loved us. They love their children. They will do whatever they can to protect them. You put a gun in their hand, and if something goes wrong, they're going to carry that guilt the rest of their lives. And I don't think that's the purpose of our teachers. I think a school resource officer, I think there are other measures, but I think the Attorney General should take the lead and say, let's offer other alternatives by the professionals, not as a media circus, and give local school boards the opportunity and then fight for funding.
We're going to give the last question to candidate David Cox, and after that, if you'd like to do your closing remarks. So we try to shut it down at about 7:30. They like to go home here at 8, so it gives us time to get out and mingle a little bit before we go.
We understand. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll try to be brief, but thank you once again for you and your wife coming visiting us in Pickens County. Appreciate your efforts to change our community. Certainly that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that I've noticed as a pastor and a businessman in this community is that our drug problem, and I want to address that if I can, is not out of control. It's at a panic state. Mm-hmm. I employ a lot of people throughout the county, and it is a daily consistent issue with employees, their families and kids.
Failing drug tests, yeah.
And the sad thing about it is I know a lot of people that have worked for me that have died on opioids, have children that have died, and it's not just a low poverty, and it's a high level then too. There are doctors and judges and attorneys that are facing these same issues. One of the things that I have seen as a property owner is when you know that activity is going on in a piece of property, you can evict the person, but that doesn't solve it because they know very quickly they can set up shop across the street, do the same thing. I know our Constitution protects people's their living quarters. But there needs to be a special task force in Pickens County, and I would say many places around the state, that just target houses. I know you can't violate their rights,
Sure.
but there needs to be funding and training and effort put on individuals that are willing to say, we're going to sit outside these homes, we're going to watch the traffic, we're going to pull the cars, we're going to get a warrant, we're going to go in and bust them. These drug lords know how to hide from law enforcement.
Sure.
And the law enforcement have told me, David, I know I can't do anything about it.
Sure.
I have made many phone calls and registered complaints. And what I get back is, we can't go in their home. I know that, and I want that protected. That right is our right under our Constitution. But we can sit outside and stake these houses out. And we can say, hey, this is suspicious activity. We can pull those cars and get warrants to go in these homes and shut these drug houses down. What is sad about Pickens County is that these drug lords are not going to open up a house in a nice neighborhood.
Right.
They love rural areas like Pickens County, because if you drive through the streets or down the community areas and you pull down a road and pull up at a mobile home, you better be careful, because it's probably not grandma living there.
Right.
And they can protect their property because they have rights just like us, and they know that. And if you pull up there, you can get yourself in trouble.
Sure.
But a lot of these people know that and are really, really protecting their kingdoms, their drug lord kingdoms, by those rights.
Right.
I would say that, I want to ask your opinion, how hard is it to get funding, like in Pickens County, where we spend a lot of time and effort, instead of trying to run down these little petty drug people, bust these houses, because that's where the drug people are at. That's where they do their dirty work, and anybody can go in that house night or day and buy anything they want and leave that premises, and they haven't violated any laws other than the fact they brought drugs illegally.
Right.
And most officers and most people can't stop them, and there's not a lot you can do about it. So they're not going anywhere. They're going to stay right there doing that until we put a task force in place
Right.
that would target enough to strike fear in these people and say, if you keep this activity up, we're going to bust you. We're coming after you. We're going to get you. We're going to shut that house down, and we're going to hold you accountable for your actions. And I agree. These people that are killing our kids, killing our youth, 64,000 people, young people a year die because of opioid overdoses.
Right.
That is a crisis in America. We can talk about people dying in schools. That's horrible, horrible. We can talk about people dying in Afghanistan and wars. That's terrible. But we're losing an entire generation of people because of this problem. And if we don't take it serious, it's only going to get worse. These drug lords are only going to get smarter, and we're going to get weaker, and it's not going anywhere.
Right.
And it would be my effort, if I get elected, I want to see a strong task force work these issues in our community. How do you feel about that as Attorney General? Is that a possibility, or is that just dreamland for us?
It's not only a possibility, it's part of the plan that I have, and I'll close with this, if I can, in answering the question this way. I believe the U.S. Attorney has an office in Greenville, in the upstate. The U.S. Attorney has an office in the Low Country, and they have an office in Columbia. I believe the South Carolina Attorney General should do the same thing, so that you're not so distant from your local sheriff and your local prosecutor. They're doing their level best. They are trying to get these people. It goes back to having an anti-gang unit within the Attorney General's office that focuses on this activity, not sometime, not only when the headlines force it, but every single day. We will work hard to make sure we support the sheriff and the solicitor, and we will fight with the General Assembly to get more funding. What we do has to be planned and measured, and it has to be pursued. I'm someone who will deliver. I have a plan. We will approach the corruption through an anti-corruption unit. We will approach the drugs and the human trafficking and human slavery through an anti-gang unit. And we will go to their turf, and we will say, you're not doing it here anymore. We had a young lady in the Vista in Columbia who was shot after a USC-Kentucky football game by a gang. The response was, this could happen anywhere. When Todd Atwater becomes Attorney General, the response is going to be anywhere but here. And my pledge to each solicitor and sheriff is, you need me, I'm a phone call away. If I can get a satellite office, you're going to be that much closer to where the activity is. And again, putting the grand jury on the road to make sure that we aren't losing anything and that we're stopping this. I want to thank you, Rick. You've been wonderful. Everybody, great questions. People viewing, thank you for tuning in. But again, thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thank you. It's our pleasure to have you, and to not every politician will stand in front of a crowd and take whatever question comes. Town hall is not the friendliest environment sometimes for a politician, somebody seeking votes, but I respect you for standing up here and facing the people and taking their questions, and mine.
If you can't, you shouldn't serve. It's a service. So thank you.
And
Somebody's phone is right down on the floor there.
Yes, it is. And seriously, thank you for your service to the state.
It's been a pleasure.
We do appreciate it. Politicians, I'll tell you this. My grandfather and my dad owned a car lot. And I took a lot of ribbing and teasing over my life for having a daddy for a car dealer, But my grandfather and my dad are two of the most honorable men you'd ever want to meet. When he passed, I'm not going to brag on my grandfather, but they say you preach your own funeral. And you can ask anybody in Easley that knew my granddad. He was as honorable man as you'd ever want to meet. So this thing about all politicians are terrible people is not true. It's not true. There are a lot of there are good and bad in every group. But I'll just program note, tentatively, the governor of South Carolina is going to come and visit us on April the 19th. It's not locked down completely, but they have asked for the 19th, and we're working out the details. So mark it on your calendar to come and meet the governor of South Carolina. Alan Wilson, your competitor, the Attorney General of South Carolina, will be joining us May 10th. And I was trying to think if there's any. Mr. Cox and Allen here, Mr. Allen, and Neil Collins will be facing off on April the 26th in a town hall with the three of them, where they get to stand up here and do what Mr. Atwater did. So we're all looking forward to that. That'll be fun. God bless you. Be safe going home, and thank you for joining us tonight. And again, thank you for driving up here from Lexington.